Today is going to be a different video. I'm going to be going over some vintage magazines, vintage books, vintage ads, all about weddings and getting married because I'm getting married in 2 months and I just thought it would be so fun to go through some vintage items I have related to weddings and see what we could learn from people of the past. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. I love reading about bridal fashion. Right here it states that white wedding gowns became popular because of Queen Victoria when she wed Prince Albert in the 1840s. But before that, it wasn't popular to wear white. And even down here, it says that bridesmaids would typically wear white as well, which is so funny because now that's definitely not the case. This part is super interesting too because it says that from the 19th century through the early 1900s, long sleeves and modest necklines were mandatory. Then 1920s, necklines tended to still be modest, but for the first time, short sleeve and even sleeveless styles were also worn. From the 1930s through the early 1960s, most bridal gowns had long sleeves. And it's just interesting that removable sleeves were a thing back then too. And I feel like that's still a thing now. Like, I know some of my friends that have had that. This part is super interesting too. It says, unlike most modern women, brides of the past usually expected that their bridal gown would have to be worn after the wedding. So it talks about how it would, they would change it back into a normal dress or, alter it a little bit so that it can be worn every day. And I just think that's interesting because it's kind of sad now that we only really wear our wedding dress once and never again, but it seems like in the past they would wear them often or multiple times even after their wedding. I have 2 vintage ads that are wedding related. This one is from De Jour Kiss, which I absolutely love. I have a whole video on De Jour Kiss if you're interested. It was made in France and marketed to Americans, but look at how stunning this is. And down here, I think it more so mentions the products, like the toilet water. But in this little blurb, it says, so joyed were the fairies that they attended her wedding. Some came in chariots drawn by swans. Ah, how stunning is that illustration? Some riding on soft clouds. This is just so stunning and exactly the vibes I want for my wedding. Just very whimsical. There's a castle in the background, fairies, swans, and look at the happy couple. This ad is from 1921, which is just insane. Then this ad is from Maybelline, world's favorite eye makeup. It says at the bottom. And at the top it says, happy the bride with lovely eyes. Look at how stunning. I love the bright red lipstick and the veil. This one's from 1945 and it has all the different eye products that she used, like the mascara. It's actually the cake mascara, which is so interesting. We have an eyebrow pencil and a misty eyeshadow. I just love this one. I think it's so cute and I love having it in my vintage ad collection. It says, the eyes he adores glowing with loveliness on her wedding day. Silently she vows to keep them radiant always. She knows she can depend on the magic of Maybelline eye makeup, and so can you. For truly enchanting charm, always use Maybelline, the world's favorite eye makeup. Next, I want to go over my ladies' home journal from March 1902, over 100 years ago. Stunning, still in beautiful condition. I have the whole magazine here. Look at the cover. It is perfect. It is so cute. But anyways, there is a section on weddings and brides in this magazine, so I thought we could read it, see what it was like to be a bride in 1902. Here's the article in the Ladies' Home Journal about weddings. weddings. It is called The Correct Home Wedding of Today. So it's actually about having a wedding in your home. And it starts with the girl's home seems the most natural and appropriate place for the great event of her life, the shelter of the home nest about her until she goes forth to take her new place in the world. So I'm going to read this and I'll recap the most important or interesting parts, but I just love going through old magazines like this. Here are some little purses and advertisements. It is saying that the cards or the invitations should be sent out a fortnight in advance, and for some friends it should be sent so that they receive it the day following the wedding. That's so different than now. We sent out our invitations months and months in advance, so I find that kind of funny. From 2 to 8 bridesmaids are chosen from among the bride's intimate friends, and a maid of honor, usually her favorite sister or friend. A matron of honor may replace the maid if the dearest friend is married. I feel like all of that remains true today. As for the bride's dress and bouquet, it says the traditional bridal dress is of white satin with tulle veil and orange blossoms. It's funny because the other book I was reading about vintage fashion mentioned orange blossoms. Like that had to be on the dress back then. I'm looking back on my vintage fashion book that I went through already. The best clue that a dress is a wedding gown is the presence of orange blossoms, the symbol of chastity and fertility. That is why orange blossoms were used. It is so interesting that I read this a few days ago and I read about the orange blossoms, and now to actually see it in a vintage magazine that is what was going on is crazy. Then it says the gown is made with a high neck, sleeves reaching to the wrist or elbows, and a long train, but almost any white gown may be worn in spite of traditions. The veil should reach to the end of the train. Many brides wear no gloves. An old rule of bridal etiquette says a contracting hand should be uncovered. The bride's bouquet may be of any white flowers. Bride roses and lily of the valley are favorites. This part hasn't changed much. It is the costumes of the bridal party. It says that the bride decides what the bridesmaids' gowns shall be and where to have them made, but they should be purchased by the young woman themselves. Thereafter, usefulness should be considered. So you should consider if they'll be able to use the dress in the future for something, like that they'll actually like it. And I think that is true today. All of that seems pretty similar to how we do it now. A lot of this is actually pretty similar. It says the maid of honor holds the bride's bouquet when the ring is given, which I know is a thing that we do now. And then here it's all about the arranging for the bridal processional, and it seems pretty spot on with the bridesmaids and the groomsmen walking down, and then the bride walks down with her father. Like that whole thing all seems pretty similar. Here it talks about refreshments for an afternoon wedding, and it talks about bonbons, which I don't even know what is a bonbon. I feel like I have to look that up, but for refreshments here and here it mentions how young folks are fond of bonbons. But here I thought was interesting. It says when there is dancing, which is unusual, the bride and bridegroom open the ball. So I guess dancing is unusual, which now dancing is a big part of weddings, I feel. So that was kind of fascinating. I also think just the fact that they call the groom the bridegroom in this article is kind of funny because we just call them groom now. And then lastly, it says some suggestions for outdoor weddings, and it says it is a growing custom to celebrate country weddings in May and June out of doors, which is so funny because Randy and I are getting married in May, and outside. It says, for a country wedding, the invitation should give full information about trains and carriages or carryalls be sent to convey the guests to and from the station. I love how it mentions carriages. Oh, such a different time. It talks about how the bride should change into her travel attire before they leave, and all acclaim the young couple as they are whirled away to, let us hope, a happy future. Let me know if you want to see more of these magazines. I have a few of them, and they're just stunning. I love looking through them. This is some spring fashion. Oh, this video is specifically about wedding related things, but in the future I could totally go through more of my vintage magazines and show you what's inside, because it sure is fascinating. Next I have this gorgeous old book. I have been meaning to do a video on this book. I might do a whole video. Again, let me know if you're interested in seeing more about any of these things I'm showing. It is from the year 1900, I believe. That's what it said on Etsy when I bought it. And it just, I have to be so careful because it is just so old and kind of falling apart. But I'm not using gloves. I do have clean hands. I'm not using gloves because I've heard that sometimes that can tear the pages even more because the way the gloves fit a lot of times are too big on me. So anyways, they say if you have clean, freshly washed hands, you're totally fine to touch some of these old items. But we're going to go in this book because there's a whole section on marriage and being a bride. These are the two doctors that wrote this book. Again, it's kind of falling apart, so I have to be really careful. But look at this. It's a guide to health and beauty. And see, it even says with hints of courtship, marriage, mental conditions, etc. I just can't believe some of this stuff still exists. It's just so cool to have a piece of history like this. There are sections on how to become beautiful and womanly beauty. But today we are going to do love and marriage. Here is the love and marriage section, and it says the age that you should marry is between 20 and 25. So I'm already not doing well there. I'm 26 right now. Let me read a little bit of this passage. This is about the proper time for marriage. So having reached the proper age and found the proper person, the question arises, is there any choice as to the time of marriage? If marriage were founded upon instinct alone, spring would without doubt be the proper season, as it is the mating season of the lower animals and the period of the greatest activity in the vegetable kingdom. But in true marriage, there should be other considerations besides the gratification of the sexual instinct. Besides, in man, there is no season of the year when the sexual instinct is absent. Hence, marriage is proper at any time. Oh my gosh. As for time in the month, the middle of the menstrual period is to be preferred from motives of delicacy. I just love reading this. I'm drinking my tea, reading this, thinking about all the women that may have read this before, over 100 years ago, reading this and taking in this information and applying it to their lives. It's just wild to think about. Like, who had this book before me and what were they thinking when they read it? What is their story? It's just so interesting to think about. It also talks about how you shouldn't have a baby right after marriage because you're kind of stressed out, and how the journey to the wedding is hard on the nervous system, basically. And I just thought that's interesting because I've been feeling the wedding stress, so I just thought it's interesting that even back then it was kind of a stressful time getting the wedding prepared. In the section, The Age of the Husband, it warns against early marriage, which is kind of interesting because I thought back then they wanted you to marry really early, but This is warning against it. Here it's saying that as a rule, the woman should be younger than her husband. It says after 45 years, most women cannot hope for children, therefore their marriage would be a close friendship. So if you marry past 45, it's saying marriage in its full meaning has no longer an existence. That's kind of harsh and interesting. Here it says that nature loves variety, and basically saying that it is that in marriage a person inclines strongly to one of a different temperament to a person quite unlike himself. So I think it's basically saying that it is good to find someone that's opposite of you or has a different temperament than you. And I find that interesting because it's kind of true, at least in a lot of cases I've seen. I'm I'm a little bit more outgoing and all over the place, and Randy's very calm and just kind of brings me down to earth or balances me out. So I think that's definitely true. It's cool that they're kind of pointing to that. This part is reminding me of Bridgerton. This is about the moral and mental character, and this is saying that this proverb is very, very false. It says a reformed rake makes the best husband. What is a rake? So they're saying that's not true. What is a rake? A man who has deceived and destroyed trusting virtue. A man who has entered the service of the devil to undermine and poison that happiness in marriage which all religion and science are at such pains to cultivate. So it's saying we know him well in our capacity as physicians. It just reminds me of Bridgerton that they're mentioning the word rake, but I think this is saying to avoid rakes, and I like that. Even the approach of such men should be shunned, their company avoided. It says, from the day of marriage, the woman undergoes a change in her whole structure. She is similar to her former self, but not the same. It is often noticed that the children of a woman in her second marriage bear a marked resemblance to her first husband. Not the woman alone, the man also undergoes a change and loses a portion of his personality in his mate. They two are one, not merely in a moral sense. We constantly notice a decided resemblance in old couples who have passed, say, 20 years together. They have grown to look alike in form, features, and expression, that for so long a time they have breathed the same air, eaten the same fare, and have been subject to the same surroundings, explains this to some extent. But the greater part of the change flows from mental sources. They have laughed and wept together. They have shared the same joys and pleasures. A smile or a tear on the face of one has evoked a corresponding emotion and expression on the face of the other. Their co-partnership has become a unity. That's so cute. I actually love that part. This section is about men to be avoided. So it says, therefore, as you value a pure married existence, a happy, enjoyable love union, avoid marrying a man whose reputation is tarnished with either tobacco, wine, or women, nor a man who treats his sister or mother unkindly or indifferently. Such treatment is a sure indication of meanness and wickedness. The part about how he treats his sister or mother is so true. I feel like that's very telling about a man and how he will treat you. This part is about a study that they did, and basically they determined that girls should wait at least till they're 20 to marry, 20 years of age, and men should wait until they are 25. They say that an engagement should not be longer than a year, nor shorter than 3 months. That's kind of their way of thinking. We did longer than that. It takes a lot to plan a wedding these days. My grandma told me about her wedding and how it was like pretty quickly after they got engaged. I think it was just different back then. This part is interesting. It says custom prescribes a journey immediately after marriage of a week or a month or 2. It is unwise. The event itself is disturbance enough for the system. So I think they're saying the wedding is disturbance enough. And to be hurried hither and thither, stowed in narrow berths and inconvenient carriages, troubled with baggage, and annoyed by cabmen, waiters, and hangers-on of every description is enough in ordinary times to test the temper of a saint. So basically it's saying the honeymoon is a lot of trouble and should be avoided in a way. Randy and I are actually not doing a honeymoon right away. We're going to wait a little bit, so this is kind of solidifying our decision there. Not only is the young wife tried beyond all her experience and her nervous system harassed, but the husband too partakes of her weakness. Oh my gosh. It does say, though, that the young pair should escape the prying eyes of friends and relatives at such a moment, so they do think you should go away, but choose some quiet resort not too long a journey from home where they can pass a few weeks in acquiring that more intimate knowledge of each other's character so essential to their future happiness. And that wraps up the love and marriage chapter of this book from the early 1900s. I am so interested in reading more of this book. There's some beauty related chapters on how to look beautiful, and I think we definitely should visit those chapters. But also the next chapter is the wife, and maybe once Randy and I are married, it could be fun to read this chapter and see if it gives me any good advice on how to be a good wife. I just love this book, and look at this photo. Here's a closer look at the image. I didn't even know there was images in this book. That makes me even more excited to look through it, because I think this is the first image I've seen besides the pictures of the authors in the beginning. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.